Essiva, this is LaserBolt, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about status effect. I know a lot of you guys have been asking this question. There are more questions than answers, and some of you might not know really how status effect work, what they do, what are the buffs, what are the debuffs, how do you get unstatus effect when a status effect is applied to you. Today we're going to be covering all that information, so if all that sounds like something you're definitely interested, a like rating would be greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget about our monthly giveaway. It is pinned in the pinned comment. Good luck to everybody that's participating. So what exactly are status effects? Now, a status effect are able to be obtained from weapons, abilities, and you're also able to get them on yourself based on enemy attacks. Now, along with status effects dealing damage, there are also 8 different types of status effect you're able to find within the game. Number 1 is Ash. Number 2 is Bleed. Number 3 is Burn, Vulnerable, Freeze, Toxic, Weakness, and Slow. These are a total of 8 different status effects, and today we're going to be breaking down each individual one of them. We're going to put them in categories. We're going to start off with the first 2, which are going to be considered crowd control status effect. This includes Ash and Freeze. Now, these 2 particular status effects are found, one is found within the Pyromancer, and the other one is found within the Technomancer. Now, that does not mean that if you're a Devastator or if you're a Trickster, you could not apply these status effect. You could actually apply these status effects by using mods or using weapons that give you that status effect. So in general, the status effect is not tied down to a specific class. Anybody's able to use it. So what do these actually do? These are crowd control status effect. Basically what they do is they hinder and stop the enemy's movement, or they stop your movement whenever it is applied to you. So basically, if someone applies Ash to you, it's going to stop the enemy for 2.5 seconds. I know it doesn't seem that much, but theoretically, it actually is very helpful, especially when you can stop multiple enemies at once. Now, you also have Freeze. Freeze is able to stop an enemy for 3.5 seconds. Now, this is interesting because this one does last a little bit longer than Ash, but both of them do a pretty solid job when it comes to stopping enemies. Now, one thing to know is that when you use these 2 items consecutively, the duration of the status effect gets reduced. So it's no longer 2.5 or 3.5. It actually gets reduced. Now, you're probably wondering, Laser, what happens if I get inflicted by Ash? What happens if I get inflicted by Freeze? How do I remove this status effect as quickly as possible? Well, in order for you guys to remove that status effect, you use your melee button. You melee your way out of Ash, you melee your way out of Freeze. That's going to reduce the amount of time that you're actually within that status effect. So it's always good to know how to get rid of the status effect, especially if it's getting applied to you. In addition to that, guys, when you guys are applying this status effect to elites or, bosses, these bosses or elites will be able to trigger something called the effect resistance. Basically, what this does, it makes them immune to this particular status effect. So you're going to want to be paying close attention to whenever you're fighting an enemy. If they get this little icon on top of their on the top of their bar, that means that they are resistant to the status effect that you're applying, and you might need to switch it up. Now it's time to look at the 3 different status effects that actually apply damage over time. Basically, these status effects are going to allow you to shoot a bullet, and it's kind of like inflicting poison to the enemy because it's going to be doing damage over time. That is Bleed, Burn, and Toxic. Now, all of these are a little bit different as to how much they're able to do in damage. So we're going to go one by one. Now, before we dive in and take a look at how much damage they do, these are going to be extremely important to remember that if you want to do a lot of damage with these effects, you want to make sure that your ability power is as high as possible, because the higher your ability power is, the more damage these status effects are going to do. So if you're going to be making a build that's primarily being focused on Burn, build of Toxic, you want to make sure that your ability power is as high as possibly can be to do the most effective damage. So let's take a look at what type of damage these do. So let's start off with Bleed. Bleed does damage equal to 2.5% of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for the duration of 5 seconds. So it does last pretty long, and you're able to trigger this quite often. Now, Burn does damage equal to 3.7% of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for the duration of 6 seconds. And Toxic does damage equal to 3.5 of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for the duration of 6 seconds. So we notice right here, guys, we see that the most powerful status effect is Burn at the current moment. In addition to that, the number 2 would probably be Toxic, and the last one would be Bleed. Now, just because it looks like those are the most powerful ones, we are still able to synergize perfectly with certain characters to maximize the potential of bleed, burn, and toxic. So don't think just because you're seeing these numbers right now, you're saying, well, I think I'm just gonna make a burn build. Bleed is still pretty effective as long as you synergize perfectly with your character. That's going to be why it's super important you keep it locked in this channel for our builds, which are going to make you be very powerful with any of these status effects. Now, keep in mind, if you are playing co-op, each player will be able to cast one instance of each status effect per enemy. So basically, you could apply bleed, burn, and toxic to one enemy at once, and you're going to be able to inflict that status effect every single time. So you guys could coordinate and be like, yo, you do bleed, you do burn, you do toxic, bing bada bing, that enemy is dead, right? Someone could do ash, someone could do freeze. So there's a lot of ways to multi combo them, but that's good to know that just because you applied one status effect to one enemy doesn't mean you cannot apply other ones as long as other teammates in your team are applying a different status effect. Now we're going to take a look at the two that are pretty much the ones that are going to be affecting you the most, and the ones you want to be paying attention to whenever weapons say that they improve vulnerable effect, that they improve weakness effect, because these are going to be very crucial to your outcome. So what exactly is vulnerable? Vulnerable increases the damage you receive by 25% for 10 seconds. So you want to keep in mind, if you are going to be using something that's vulnerable, you are going to be taking a little bit more damage than you were if you weren't vulnerable. The other one is weakness. Weakness is actually the one you want to look for, because this is actually decreases the damage dealt by 30% for 60 seconds. So basically, if you're applying weakness to yourself or weakness to the enemy, it's going to decrease the damage that that enemy does to you. So for example, if I shoot a boss and I apply weakness to it, then it's not going to be doing as much damage as it probably would if I didn't apply that status effect. And the last status effect that we're talking about is called slow. Slow reduces the movement and attack speed by 30 to 75%, depending on the enemy's status resistance. The more resistance they have, the less status effect of slow you're going to be able to apply. Now, one question you might be having is, Laser, how do I get rid of some of these status effects if these are applied? Like I mentioned already, if you're applied ash or freeze, you punch your way out of it. If you are applied bleed, what you want to do if the status effect bleed is applied to you, you want to stand still and not move for 1 or 2 seconds, and that's going to remove that status effect. For burn, if you get fire on you, you just roll. That's going to remove that status effect for you guys. So that's how you guys get rid of those status effects, so you guys won't be getting damaged over time every single time. Overall, in general, those are the way these status effects work, and synergizing them perfectly with your build and also with your weapons is going to be crucial and fundamental to the end game, as some characters tend to have really good status effect outputs, and factor primarily you could theoretically do a build just specifically on one particular status effect, enhancing the power. One thing you want to make sure you keep in mind, though, whenever we're putting a build together, is that we're focusing only primarily on one particular status effect, is that we need to have weapons with other status effects, due to the fact that the enemies, especially elites, will become invulnerable to these particular status effect, making your build a little bit, not so powerful. So once the game gets released, we're going to be able to dive in a little bit deeper, talk a little bit more about what status effects are more important, what are more helpful, what are more powerful. In addition to that, we're also going to be able to dive in and talk about which status effects to apply to what enemies and when. But unfortunately, we do have to wait for the game to come out to get all that information. So I hope you guys are enjoying our Outriders coverage. If you are, guys, do me the huge favor, drop a like, drop a comment, but most importantly, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you guys won't miss when our Outriders videos go live, and make sure you guys check out any of the 2 remaining videos that are popping up right now on your screen. They're very helpful, very informative. Make sure you guys keep it locked in this channel, and don't forget to stay tuned for more Outriders coverage, and I will catch you guys on the next video.